They didn't come at you directly. They went for your image first, your photo, your likeness, your energetic fingerprint. 6 days ago, behind locked doors and hidden intentions, someone placed your face into darkness thinking that a picture could rewrite a destiny. But what they never understood is this: your life is not stored in a photograph. Your destiny is written beyond human reach. While they were performing rituals in secrecy, something ancient shifted in your favor. Heaven doesn't need invitations. The universe doesn't wait for permission. What was meant to weaken you triggered a higher defense system that doesn't just block attacks, it reflects them with precision. And the results shocked even those who practice these spiritual arts. The impact landed not on you, but on the very hands that sent it. Some of you felt the shift before you understood it. A sudden emotional release, a strange calm after emotional chaos, sleep returning after unexplained restlessness. That wasn't coincidence. That was the spiritual recoil of energy snapping back to its sender. When darkness reaches for light it cannot hold, the snapback is violent. This is why you're still standing. This is why your life didn't collapse when it was supposed to. This is why confusion around you began to dissolve instead of deepen. You weren't protected by luck. You were protected by assignment. And that terrifies anyone who thought your fall could be purchased. If this resonates, take a second right now to like this video and subscribe to Mirror of the Soul, because what you're witnessing isn't just a story, it's a spiritual law unfolding in real time. And ask yourself this: if someone truly tried to erase you and failed, what does that say about who you're becoming? Drop your thoughts in the comments. 3 months' salary. That's what they exchanged to initiate the attack against you. Not spare money, not playful curiosity, intentional sacrifice. That detail alone reveals how serious this was. Someone believed your absence would benefit their future more than your presence ever could. That level of intention carries weight and consequence. They planned the ritual. They prepared the space. They invoked spiritual forces without understanding spiritual law, because darkness always promises power, but it never explains the interest rate. And when the consequence came, it didn't arrive slowly. It arrived suddenly, disrupting their health, their peace, their stability, and in some cases, their very existence. Some of you noticed strange collapses around certain individuals: unexpected sickness, sudden financial loss, emotional breakdowns, shocking exposures, real-life consequences that unfolded with unnatural timing. These weren't coincidences stacked by accident, these were corrections stacked by law. And while they were unraveling, you were being stabilized. While their life lost structure, yours began to reorganize. While panic entered their home, peace quietly entered yours. That is not revenge. That is recalibration. That is what happens when someone tampers with what the universe itself has sealed. They believed the energy would leave their hands and disappear into the shadows. They never anticipated that spiritual law has a return address. What they sent out didn't dissolve, it traveled, gathered force, and came back multiplied. The universe doesn't ignore intention. It amplifies it, especially when that intention carries harm, jealousy, and destruction within it. Some consequences arrive loudly, others arrive silently, but this one didn't knock, it kicked. The ripple effect spread through relationships, finances, health, and mental stability. A calm exterior hid internal collapse, and the scariest part, they knew exactly why it was happening, because deep inside, guilt always recognizes the sound of justice approaching. Meanwhile, your own life began to feel strangely lighter, not because everything suddenly became perfect, but because the invisible pressure you'd been carrying without explanation began to dissolve. The heaviness lifted, the anxiety softened, the confusion cleared. It felt like an unseen weight had finally been removed from your spirit. That's how divine protection works. It doesn't always announce itself with thunder. Sometimes it whispers through relief. Sometimes it reveals itself through peace returning where chaos once lived. And sometimes it reveals itself through the collapse of what once threatened you. They aimed for your life, but they struck the wrong layer. They attacked what they could see, your image, your identity, your outer reality. But your power was never rooted there. Your true strength is anchored in a realm they cannot access, no matter how much money, ritual, or effort they invest. Your soul doesn't operate on their level. It moves through divine authorization, not human manipulation. That's why the darkness never reached your core. That's why the attack felt real, but the damage never became permanent. You bent, but you didn't break. You shook, but you didn't shatter. This is what confuses your enemies the most. They see that something was attempted. They see that something failed, but they can't understand why. And the truth is simple. You are not operating under the same spiritual jurisdiction they are. You answer to a higher authority. This is why some of you survived things that statistically should have ruined you. The breakdowns you should have had never fully formed. The losses that should have destroyed you only refined you. The betrayals that should have hardened you instead awakened you. That's not coincidence. That's protection rewriting outcomes. They didn't come after you casually. They came after you because your presence disturbed their illusion of control. Your growth exposed their stagnation. Your light revealed their shadow. And instead of changing themselves, they tried to eliminate the reminder, you. Your name made them uncomfortable. Your progress unsettled them. Your peace irritated them. Not because you wronged them, but because you mirrored everything they avoided becoming. And when someone cannot rise, they often try to pull down what reminds them of their lack. That's why the attack was so intentional. That's why the sacrifice was so high. That's why the method was so dark. Fear drives people to extreme measures when they believe someone else's destiny threatens their survival. But here's the truth they learned too late. You were never their enemy. You were their reflection. And instead of confronting their own cracks, they aimed at your crown. That choice cost them more than they were prepared to pay. While you were living your ordinary nights, scrolling, resting, thinking, worrying, or simply trying to survive another day, something extraordinary was happening beyond your awareness. You weren't praying loudly. You weren't performing rituals. You weren't calling on protection in panic. And yet, protection moved anyway. This is the kind of defense that doesn't need noise. It doesn't need candles. It doesn't need fear. It moves because it's assigned, not summoned. And that night, when the spiritual attack was initiated, your soul was already surrounded by a force older than the fear that tried to reach you. Some of you remember how that night felt strange. You couldn't sleep, or you slept deeply for the first time in weeks. You woke up suddenly for no logical reason, or you had a dream that felt heavier than normal. That wasn't random. That was your spirit responding to movement you couldn't see. The beautiful part is this: you never had to fight. The defense was never outsourced to your strength. It was handled for you quietly, efficiently, and without warning to the ones who meant harm. That's what real protection feels like. You only realize it after the danger has already passed. They expected a reaction from you: fear, breakdown, loss, collapse. What they didn't expect was silence, strength, stability, growth. And when the results started appearing on the opposite side, panic entered places they thought were untouchable. When dark intention fails, it doesn't vanish. It implodes. And the implosion never happens neatly. It shakes belief systems. It cracks confidence. It exposes hidden instability. The ones who felt untouchable suddenly realized they were standing on fragile ground. Some witnessed sudden chaos around them with no explanation anyone could logically justify. Relationships fractured. Money vanished. Sleep became impossible. Fear settled into their atmosphere. The same fear they once wished on you became the air they had to breathe. Meanwhile, your life didn't fall apart. It didn't collapse. It didn't dim. It adjusted. It recalibrated. Your path shifted with quiet precision, as if unseen hands were steering obstacles away from you at the last second. If you've seen surprising reversals in places where harm once originated, write "The tables turned" in the comments. And welcome to Mirror of the Soul, where spiritual cause and effect are finally spoken aloud. Let this question sit with you. What if their chaos was the echo of what they tried to send you? You were never supposed to engage. You were never meant to retaliate. You were never invited into the battlefield because the protection over you doesn't require your exhaustion to function. You weren't trained for spiritual warfare. You were designed to be protected from it. There are fights that drain you, and there are fights that define you without touching you. This was the second kind. The outcome was never going to be decided by your effort, your anger, or your awareness. It was decided at a level beyond emotion. That's why the conflict never entered your hands. You didn't have to defend yourself. You didn't have to expose anyone. You didn't have to explain anything. Life itself handled what your voice was never required to address. This is something deeply humbling when you realize it, because it means your survival wasn't about how hard you fought. It was about what was never allowed to reach you. And once you see that, your entire understanding of strength changes. They expected your life to unravel. They anticipated your desperation. They waited for your reaction. But when peace entered your atmosphere instead, confusion swallowed theirs. Because calm is terrifying to anyone who invested in your collapse. Your ability to remain steady became the loudest statement in the room. Your emotional control disrupted their narrative. Your quiet progress became unbearable to those who expected your disappearance. Nothing unsettles dark intention like light that refuses to flicker. You didn't argue. You didn't panic. You didn't chase explanations. You simply lived. And that calm consistency became the very thing they could not overcome. Because chaos is only powerful where peace doesn't exist. Some of you noticed that people who once spoke boldly against you suddenly grew silent. They avoided eye contact. They withdrew from your presence. They couldn't face the fact that you were still rising. If you've noticed people growing distant after trying to disturb your peace, comment, "Still calm," under this video, and welcome home to Mirror of the Soul. Let me ask you something deeply revealing. What if your emotional stability is the proof that the attack failed completely? There comes a moment in every protected life when the pattern becomes undeniable. Too many narrow escapes, too many reversals, too many silent rescues, too many closed doors that later reveal themselves as blessings. Eventually, denial becomes impossible. This is the moment many of you are standing in right now. The realization that you were never navigating alone, that the near misses weren't luck, that the survival wasn't coincidence, that the timing wasn't random. Something has been walking with you through dangers you didn't even recognize. And when you recognize that, gratitude changes how you move. Arrogance disappears. Fear loosens its grip. Confidence no longer feels forced, it becomes grounded. Because now you know your life isn't just happening, it's being guided. This awareness also changes how you respond to threats. You don't tremble the same way. You don't react the same way. You don't beg the same way. You walk differently when you know something unseen is walking with you. Energy always recognizes its match. What was sent toward you was fueled by fear, jealousy, and control. But what surrounds you operates on a completely different frequency. So when that dark intention approached your field, it couldn't attach. It couldn't root. It couldn't survive. It simply disintegrated on impact. Some attacks don't bounce back immediately. Some dissolve the moment they collide with higher vibration. That's why nothing felt dramatic on your end. No explosion. No obvious spiritual showdown. Just a quiet failure on their side and a quiet continuation on yours. Your life didn't derail. Your mind didn't collapse. Your emotions didn't spiral the way they expected. Instead, clarity returned. Strength returned. Motivation returned. That's because energy that cannot attach often returns to its sender heavier than before. This is why some people panic when their plans for destruction don't work. They know what's supposed to happen next. They understand the law even if they try to cheat it. And when they realize the rebound has begun, fear becomes their new companion. After the attack failed, something else shifted: separation. Without an argument, without a dramatic ending, without a final confrontation, people began exiting your life quietly. Connections faded. Distances formed without hostility. And at first it felt confusing. But protection doesn't just block danger, it also removes access. When someone proves they don't belong in your future, they slowly lose proximity to your present. Not out of punishment, but out of preservation. Some of you noticed old friends becoming strangers. Some noticed gossip dissolving. Some noticed watchers losing visibility. This wasn't abandonment. This was extraction. Your life was being decluttered at a spiritual level. And here's the strange part: you didn't feel lonely the way you expected to. You felt lighter, less observed, less drained, less entangled. That's because access is expensive when it's misused, and your protection finally collected the debt. Looking back now, the signs feel obvious. The strange tension in conversations, the forced smiles, the off-key compliments, the questions that felt disguised as curiosity, the sudden interest in your struggles. At the time, you called it normal. Now you recognize it as surveillance. Protection has a strange way of revealing the truth only after you're safe enough to see it. While you were vulnerable, your awareness was subdued. But once your safety was secured, your vision sharpened. Memory became clear. Patterns became undeniable. You now see how certain people never celebrated you, they studied you. They never supported your growth, they monitored it. They never prayed for your success, they quietly feared it. And yet, despite all of that, you still survived. That alone should change how you view your past. Because what you walked through without knowing nearly destroyed you, now only strengthens you in hindsight. If realization is hitting you right now about certain people in your past, comment, "I see the signs now." And make sure you're subscribed to Mirror of the Soul, because clarity always arrives after protection. Ask yourself, who was closest to you when your vision was weakest? There came a moment, subtle but decisive, when something around you permanently changed. Your reaction slowed, your boundaries sharpened, your intuition strengthened, your tolerance for manipulation vanished. This wasn't emotional growth alone. This was a spiritual upgrade. After surviving what was meant to destroy you, your energy recalibrated. You no longer leaked power the way you once did. You no longer absorbed chaos without question. You became selective with attention, time, emotion, and trust. This is the phase where attacks become rare, not because enemies disappear, but because access disappears. When people can no longer reach your emotional core, they stop trying to wound it. When reactions vanish, control vanishes with them. And that's what truly makes you untouchable. Not arrogance, not force, not visibility, but detachment with discernment. You feel deeply, but you don't bleed publicly anymore. Even if they never confess, even if they never apologize, even if they never face you again, they will always know what they attempted, and guilt is a prison no protection will rescue them from. You moved forward, you healed, you rose, you detached, but they stayed behind with the memory of intention, and intention leaves fingerprints the conscience never forgets. They will hear your name in random places. They will see your face in moments of weakness. They will feel uneasy for reasons they can't explain. This is the part people don't talk about. The attack may fail, but the awareness doesn't. And awareness becomes its own form of punishment. Because now every downfall feels deserved, and every struggle feels self-inflicted. Meanwhile, you are no longer carrying what was never yours. You gave back the energy. You reclaimed your peace. You walked away with your life intact. That's not just survival, that's spiritual victory. There is a day that arrives quietly without ceremony when the spiritual balance around your life shifts forever. You don't announce it. You don't feel fireworks, but you sense it in how the atmosphere changes. The pressure eases. The resistance fades. The unseen warfare that once followed your footsteps suddenly goes silent. This is the day you stop being hunted and become the consequence. Before that shift, you felt watched, tested, targeted without explanation. You were misunderstood, misjudged, even attacked in ways you couldn't fully explain. But now, something is different. The same people who once moved boldly against you grow cautious. The same voices that once whispered your name in envy grow quiet, not because they became kind, but because they became aware. Survival did what intimidation never could. Endurance did what confrontation never needed to. You became living proof that not everyone who is attacked is meant to fall. And when your life continues to rise after confirmed opposition, the message spreads without words. Do not try what others already failed. This is the level where attacks don't end because enemies disappear. They end because fear replaces their confidence. Fear of consequence, fear of reflection, fear of triggering a backlash they now know is real. You didn't become dangerous by force. You became dangerous by surviving what was meant to erase you. Once you survive something that was spiritually engineered to destroy you, your life no longer operates under random chance. It begins to move under divine enforcement. Doors start opening that logic can't explain. Delays begin protecting you instead of frustrating you. Missed opportunities reveal themselves as hidden rescues. You realize your path is being supervised now. Even opposition starts serving you instead of stopping you. What once blocked you now teaches you. What once frightened you now strengthens you. Betrayals sharpen your discernment. Losses redirect your purpose. It's as if every experience, good or painful, is now being filtered through a higher agreement. This is what a divine contract feels like. Not perfection, but protection with purpose. Not comfort, but guidance with authority. You still struggle, you still grow tired, you still question, but you no longer collapse the way you used to. Your life bends, but it does not break. The attack that failed didn't just protect you, it activated something permanent. You are no longer moving blindly. You are being moved deliberately. And once that happens, even your enemies unknowingly play roles that push you closer to where you are meant to stand. Not everyone who attacks a protected life walks away intact. Some never regain their peace. Some lose stability. Some fall into patterns of self-destruction they can't explain. This is not superstition. It's what happens when intention collides with consequence at a level the mind cannot escape. The human conscience is not built to carry the memory of cruelty that failed, especially not when proof of failure stands alive in front of them. Every time they see you breathe, smile, progress, and rise, they remember what they tried to do, and that memory becomes a prison they never asked to enter. Some drown it with distractions, some bury it in addiction, some replay it through anxiety, some suppress it with denial, but it never fully disappears. Awareness becomes the sentence. Meanwhile, you don't carry that weight. You weren't the one who planned destruction. You weren't the one who tried to interfere with destiny. You were simply surviving, healing, living. And because of that, your nights grow lighter while theirs grow heavier. The attack was aimed at an older version of you, the one who over-explained, the one who tolerated disrespect, the one who doubted their own instincts, the one who needed validation to feel real. That version didn't make it through the storm, and that was the point of the transformation. What emerged is quieter but stronger, softer but sharper. You no longer chase closure. You no longer seek approval. You no longer bleed your emotions into unsafe spaces. You observe. You choose. You move with intention instead of reaction. They studied your old weaknesses. They targeted old insecurities. They aimed for old access points. But you no longer live there. You moved. You evolved. You shifted levels. And now, the blueprint they built their plans on no longer exists. This is the hidden victory no one talks about. Not just that you survived, but that you outgrew the identity they tried to exploit. They remember who you were, but they no longer know who you are. If you feel deeply disconnected from your past self in a peaceful way, comment, "I changed," and subscribe to Mirror of the Soul. And ask yourself this with honesty. Who are you now that survival reshaped you? Some lives are not written to collapse. They are written to endure, awaken, and demonstrate what preservation truly looks like. Yours is one of them. You weren't spared because you were perfect. You were preserved because your purpose outgrew the plot against you. What tried to break you revealed you instead. What tried to silence you clarified your voice. What tried to bury you activated your awareness. And now, you stand on the other side of something most people never even realized they were fighting. Your life carries proof now. Proof that destiny cannot be purchased. Proof that protection does not announce itself in advance. Proof that darkness does not always win just because it tries harder. You are living evidence that some falls are simply not authorized. This doesn't mean the journey gets easy. It means it gets meaningful. It means your steps now carry memory, purpose, and direction. You don't walk in blind fear anymore. You walk with informed faith. If this message spoke directly to your life, take a moment now to like this video, subscribe to Mirror of the Soul, and share this with someone who is silently surviving their own battle. And leave your final answer in the comments. At what moment did you realize your life was protected for a reason?